Hey guys, tonight you find yourself in the narrow dark of a medieval bell tower, where the stones hold the cold like old men holding grudges, and the damp straw beneath your boots gives off a faint, earthy smell of winter, smoke, and sleep. Above you, the bell hangs in blackness, broad and patient, its bronze lip waiting for the first tug of morning. Smoke from last night's hearths drifts through the rafters below, and somewhere beyond the shutters. A river mist presses softly against the village roofs. Your hands are cold. Your cloak smells of wet wool. Your boots are still muddy from yesterday, because medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here. Not because you lack courage, but because courage does very little against fleas, frozen fingers, and bread hard enough to negotiate with. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the village still sleeps below, you can comment where you're listening from and what your local time is, as if sending a tiny candle through the dark from your room to this cold tower. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand with one shoulder against the inner wall of the belfry, listening. In this village, time is not something carried in pockets or glanced at on polished faces of glass. Time is wrung. Time is pulled down from the beams by rope and weight and habit. It rolls over thatch and field, over pigsty and orchard, over the sleeping forms of cottagers under wool blankets, over the priest's narrow bed, over the miller's yard, over the frozen ruts in the lane. You are the one who wakes it. The bell rope hangs beside you, thick as a small wrist, rough with hemp and darkened by many hands. You rub your palm along it, feeling the worn fibres catch against your skin. There is a rule, though no one can quite agree whether it began with a bishop, a nervous priest, or one very particular bell ringer who disliked confusion. The rope must never be left twisted before the dawn peal. A twisted rope, some swear, makes a bell speak crookedly, and a crooked bell invites crooked luck. You do not know about luck, but you know a tangled rope can bruise your knuckles, and that is theology enough before sunrise. Below, the tower smells of cold stone, beeswax, mouse dust, and yesterday's incense. A half-burned candle rests in a little iron holder near the stair, its tallow guttered down one side like a frozen tear. You pinch the wick, coax a coal from the covered lantern, and bring the flame back to life. It trembles, then steadies, lighting the tight spiral of steps descending into shadow. The stair is so narrow that you must turn your shoulders sideways, because medieval builders seem to have believed comfort was a gateway to moral collapse. You do not descend yet. First, the bell. You plant your boots, take the rope in both hands, and draw in a slow breath. Outside, a cock gives one uncertain crow, then thinks better of it. Frost has silvered the village green. The roofs are low and hunched, their thatch beaded with dew. Beyond them, fields lie under mist, and the dark line of the forest waits like a folded cloak at the edge of the world. Somewhere a horse exhales in its stall, breath steaming in the cold. Somewhere a baby stirs. Somewhere an old woman wakes before everyone else, because old bones keep their own bells. You pull, the rope resists, then gives. Above you, the bell swings with a heavy inward groan, and the first note blooms out into the morning, deep and round, passing through your chest before it passes through the shutters. It is not a sharp sound. It is a warm bronze wave in the cold air. It moves slowly, as though the whole village must be persuaded rather than startled awake. You pull again. The second note follows, and then another. The tower seems to breathe with you. Each swing lifts your arms, draws your weight, settles through your back and knees. You know the pattern by muscle more than thought the waking bell, the call toward prayer, the marking of a day that will be muddy, hungry, ordinary, and therefore worthy of being blessed. Some villagers say the bells frighten storms away. Others say they guide lost souls. A few mutter that bells annoy demons, which may be true, though to be fair, they also annoy anyone trying to sleep late, and those people are easier to prove. The priest says the sound calls the faithful to remember God. The reeve says it calls workers to remember the Lord's fields. The baker says it tells him when he is already behind. You, who pull the rope in the cold, know only that without the bell the village feels unstitched, like a cloak with its seams picked loose. When the last note fades, you stand still and let silence return in layers. First comes the creak of the beam above, then the faint patter of thawing drops from the roof, then a cough from the lane, then the far, soft bark of a dog. That dog again, perhaps the long-legged brown one with one white paw, who has taken lately to sleeping near the church porch as if appointed to some minor holy office. No one knows who owns him. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether he came with pilgrims from the South Road or followed a fish cart from the river market. He appears where food is likely and dignity is not required. You coil the rope carefully and hang it on its peg. Your fingers ache now, and you tuck them beneath your arms for warmth. Beneath the belfry, the church waits in blue darkness. The nave floor is strewn with rushes, old and sweet sour underfoot, mixed with lavender by the women who cleaned before the last feast day. Near the altar, a beeswax candle burns with a cleaner scent than tallow, honeyed and soft, reserved for holy use because bees, it is said, know more about purity than most people. You do not argue with bees, they seem organized. You descend the spiral stairs, one hand brushing the damp wall. Each step is worn slightly hollow in the middle by generations of feet priests, ringers, boys sent to fetch forgotten candles, frightened brides, sleepy clerks, and once, according to village memory, a goat that got farther up than anyone expected and refused to confess why. At the bottom, you lift the latch and step into the body of the church. The air is warmer here, though only by a little. The walls are painted faintly with saints whose faces have faded in the smoke of years. St. Martin's cloak is still visible, cut in two for the beggar. St. Catherine's wheel has lost one spoke. St. Dunstan, some insist, looks suspiciously like the old smith's grandfather. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the painter meant it kindly. You pause near the porch and look out. The village is waking in pieces. A door opens. A woman bends to scatter grain for hens. A boy in an oversized cloak drags a pail toward the well, walking as if every stone has personally offended him. Thin smoke begins to rise from roof holes and chimneys. The smell of damp hay, wood ash, and boiling oats spreads into the morning. Somewhere, someone strikes flint. Somewhere, someone curses softly at a stubborn fire, then remembers it's near the church and lowers the complaint into a pious mumble. Your duty is not finished. The bell will be needed again for prime, for mass if the priest's cough allows, for warnings if riders come, for death if death comes, for feast days, fast days, weddings, storms, fires, and the countless small alarms by which a village convinces itself it is prepared for life. But for now, The first bell has passed over the fields, and the day has opened like a wooden door. You pull your cloak tighter and step from the porch onto the cold ground. Mud accepts your boot with a soft, familiar sigh. The brown dog lifts his head from beside the churchyard wall and looks at you as if you are late for an appointment he never explained. You look back at him. He rises, stretches, and follows. Together, you move toward the first smoke of breakfast. You cross the churchyard with the brown dog padding after you, his white paw darkened by mud, his tail held low with the solemn confidence of a creature who believes breakfast is a public institution. The graves lie quiet beneath winter grass, each mound softened by frost and time, each wooden marker leaning a little as if listening to the earth. You pass the old yew by the wall, its branches black against the paling sky, and you remember what the oldest widow says of it. Some swear yews grow best where prayers are thickest, while others say they grow where no plough dares go. No one can quite agree whether that is holy wisdom or simply sensible farming. The village lane opens before you, narrow and rutted, lined with low houses of wattle, daub, timber, and patched thatch. Smoke leaks through roof holes, not always where it should, and the morning air tastes of ash, wet straw, and something slowly warming in a pot. Your stomach answers with a small, undignified sound. The dog hears it and glances up, perhaps recognizing a fellow sufferer. You duck beneath the low lintel of Widow Avelin's hall, where half the village seems to pass through at one time or another, because she brews decent small ale, keeps a fire earlier than most, and has a pinion strong enough to heat the room without wood. The inside is dim and close. Rushes cover the beaten floor, strewn over yesterday's dirt and last week's secrets. Someone has mixed in dried mint and tansy, which helps, though only in the way a hymn helps a leaky roof nobly. But not completely. Soot-black rafters vanish into smoke above you. A clay lamp flickers near the hearth. A child still wrapped in a wool blanket stares at you from a bench, hair standing in every direction, looking less like a child than a saint who has received troubling news. Near the fire, a pot of pottage bubbles slowly, thick with oats, leeks, peas, and whatever root survived the storehouse mice. Medieval breakfast is not glamorous, but it is warm, and warmth has a way of winning every argument. Aveline ladles pottage into a wooden bowl and gives you a heel of coarse bread hard enough to serve as a minor building material. Bell rang clean. She says, You nod, warming your hands around the bowl. Rope nearly took my fingers. Then your fingers should learn discipline. This is how affection sounds before sunrise. You sit near the hearth, where the heat reaches your knees first and your soul somewhat later. The dog settles beside the door with the patience of a pilgrim at a shrine. Aveline pretends not to see him. Then, after a moment, she tosses him a scrap so small it could be mistaken for a theological concept. He accepts it with reverence. Around you, the village gathers itself. Tom the Thatcher comes in smelling of damp reeds, his cloak fur-lined at the collar but bald in patches where age has eaten the comfort out of it. The miller's apprentice arrives with flour on his sleeve and sleep in his eyes. A girl carries in a bundle of kindling. Someone speaks of frost in the fields. Someone else says frost before Candlemas means the beans will sulk. Even now, it is hard to tell whether beans truly sulk. But everyone speaks as though they have experience with difficult vegetables. Aveline keeps a little charm tucked above the hearth, a strip of red thread, a bent pin, and a tiny bone from a hen's wing, wrapped together in linen. She says it keeps the milk from turning and the children from coughing. The priest dislikes such things unless they are blessed, renamed, and placed closer to a saint. The village being practical keeps both charm and blessing. You have lived long enough among stone, smoke, and weather to know that people often tie hope wherever it will hold. You eat slowly. The pottage is plain, but it coats the belly kindly. A wooden trencher lies on the table, scarred by knives, darkened by gravy from better days. On feast days, the richer houses eat from trenchers of stale bread and give the soaked remains to the poor or the pigs, depending on charity, hunger, and how closely the priest is watching. Here, nothing is wasted. Crumbs are brushed into palms, bones become broth, ashes feed soap-making, old rushes go out to the midden. Even gossip is reused until it softens. The talk turns, as talk always does, toward the bell. Tom claims the dawn peal sounded lower than usual. The miller's apprentice says it sounded exactly the same, only Tom's ears are full of thatch. Evelyn says bells sound different when rain is coming. No one can quite agree whether she knows this from wisdom, age, or the fact that rain is nearly always coming. You keep your eyes on your bowl, because a bell ringer must never appear too certain. Certainty attracts requests. Still, you listen with quiet pride. The bell is not yours in any legal sense. It belongs to the church, to the parish, to God, to donors long dead and carved on a stone no one reads. Yet your palms know its rope, your shoulders know its weight, your sleep knows its interruptions. You feel responsible for the way it speaks across the roofs. A cracked note would shame you. A missed hour would travel farther than truth. A small boy named Colin creeps closer and asks whether the bell truly drives away night witches. His mother tells him not to pester. Evelyn says bells do drive away witches, but only lazy ones. You tell him the bell mostly wakes people who would rather not be woken, which is a power nearly as great. He considers this. Disappointed by its practicality. Children prefer the world more enchanted, though adults are not much better. They simply hide it under chores. By the hearth. An old man rubs goose grease into his knuckles for the ache. He offers you some, and you politely accept a dab, because refusing remedies insults both the giver and the goose. The grease smells faintly of supper and barnyard, but your fingers loosen a little. Some swear goose grease draws cold from the joints. Others insist nettle tea does better. The barber surgeon in the market town recommends bleeding for almost everything, which is convenient for a man who owns sharp knives. Outside, the sky brightens from iron to pearl. The bell tower is visible through the open door, rising above the church roof, square and damp and familiar. Its stones catch the weak morning light. The last sound of the dawn peal seems to linger in memory, though the air itself has moved on. You finish your bread by dipping it into the bowl until it yields, which is less eating than negotiation. Aveline hands you a small cloth bundle for later another heel of bread, a slice of onion, and a bit of smoked fish wrapped in leaves. Market day, she says. You will be sent. You had guessed as much. The priest needs lamp oil. The reeve wants notice carried to the toll-keeper, and someone must ask whether the tinker has mended the cracked handbell used for processions. Bells breed errands. This is one of the lesser-known laws of the world. You rise reluctantly from the hearth. Heat clings to your cloak for only a few steps before the cold begins taking it back. The dog rises too, as if named in the errand. Evelyn points her ladle at him. That beast is not yours. No, you say. He has employed me. The room accepts this as likely. You step out into the lane with the bundle tucked beneath your cloak. Behind you, bowls scrape, children mutter, and the fire snaps softly under the pot. Ahead, The village wakes, wider shutters open. Hens complain. A cart creaks somewhere beyond the well. Mud waits in the road with patient devotion. The dog trots at your heel. The day, having been rung into being, now expects you to walk through it. You leave the warmth of Avelin's hall behind you, and the morning closes around your shoulders with the soft insistence of damp cloth. The bundle of bread and smoked fish rests beneath your cloak, pressed near your ribs, and the brown dog follows close enough that you can hear the wet little sounds of his paws lifting from the lane. Ahead, the muddy road bends past the well, past the smithy, past the last cottages with their patched walls and low smoking roofs, and then stretches toward the market green beyond the village boundary. The bell tower remains behind you, but not quite. It stands in your hearing even when it is silent, as if the first bronze note of dawn has tucked itself into the folds of your cloak. You pass a woman rinsing a wooden pail at the well, her hands red from cold water. She nods to you and touches 2 fingers to the little pewter cross at her throat, not because you are holy, but because anyone who handles bells is considered slightly nearer to heaven, or at least slightly more likely to fall from a height. Respect takes many forms. The road is not truly a road in the grand sense sung by minstrels. It is more a long argument between mud, hooves, wheels, and hope. Cart ruts shine with brown water. Frost clings in the shadows. A broken branch lies across one ditch, and someone has tied a strip of cloth to a thorn bush nearby, a little charm for safe travel. Some swear such rags carry prayers to the saints when the wind moves them. Others say they merely show where travellers have torn their sleeves. No one can quite agree. And the thorn bush keeps its counsel. You trudge onward. Your boots sink and lift, sink and lift. The dog finds drier places without effort, which feels unfair, but then he also drinks from puddles, so perhaps balance exists. In the fields to your left, 2 men guide oxen along a strip of heavy earth, their breath pale in the air. The ploughshare turns the soil with a slow, wet sigh. Farther off, crows walk in the furrows as if inspecting work they did not pay for. A boy drives geese along the verge with a willow switch. Though the geese clearly consider themselves independent landholders, one hisses at the dog. The dog pretends not to hear it, which is wise. Geese are proof that not every creature needs a sword to be feared. By mid-morning, the track grows busier. A woman in a fur-lined cloak rides a small horse with panniers of eggs. A peddler walks beneath a pack so large he resembles a moving haystack with opinions. 2 pilgrims come behind him, their cloaks pinned with little lead badges shaped like shells and saints. One carries a staff with a tiny bell tied near the top, which gives a faint, bright chime at every step. It is hardly a proper bell in your professional judgment, but you do not say so. Every trade has its pride, and pride before breakfast is tiring. The pilgrims greet you and ask whether the way to the market is passable. You look at the mud, then at their shoes, then back at the mud. Passable, you say, if your sins are light. They laugh softly, and one tells you they have come from a shrine 2 days south, where a saint's tooth is said to cure fever when touched to the brow. Some swear the tooth is truly the saint's. Others claim it is from a sheep with unusually good connections. Even now, it's hard to tell whether relics travel by miracle, mistake, or merchant. Still, people kneel, and sometimes they rise comforted. That, too, is a kind of medicine. The market green appears gradually, first by sound wheels creaking, hens clucking in wicker cages, voices calling prices, a hammer striking pegs into damp ground, then by smell onions, wet wool, horse sweat, frying batter, fish, leather, smoke, and the sour edge of too many bodies gathered too early. Finally, the green itself opens ahead, bordered by timber houses and a low toll booth near the road, where the Lord's man sits beneath a hooded cloak with a wax tablet and a face designed to discourage joy. Merchants are setting out their goods beneath awnings darkened by rain. A cloth seller shakes out bolts of russet and undyed wool. A potter arranges bowls with the careful tenderness of a parent who knows several children will not survive the day. A woman sells candles tallow for ordinary homes, beeswax for those with money or guilt. Near the far side, a fishmonger lays smoked eels on a board, and the dog's ears rise as if a trumpet has sounded. You stop by the toll booth first, because errands have their own gravity. The Reeves notice, folded and sealed with a smear of wax, waits in your pouch. The toll keeper takes it, squints at the mark, and grunts as though literacy has personally inconvenienced him. He keeps iron weights on the table beside him, each one stamped, each one suspiciously handled. Market tolls are meant to be orderly: a coin for a stall, a fee for certain goods, a measure checked, a dispute noted, in practice. They're a dance of complaint, memory, and people insisting the fee was lower last year. A chicken seller argues that her birds are too small to be taxed as full birds. The toll keeper says a chicken is a chicken. She says not when it looks like that. The chicken, tucked beneath her arm, looks offended but underqualified to testify. You move on before being asked for an opinion. The market has its own bells, though smaller than yours, handbells rung to announce a sale, a crier's bell for notices, little harness bells on horses. Near a stall of old metalwork, you find the tinker the priest mentioned. His table holds buckles, bent knives, patched pans, hinges, hooks, and the cracked handbell used in processions. He turns it over in his blackened fingers and taps it with a nail. The sound is thin, sad, and uncertain. Can it be mended, you ask? Everything can be mended, he says, if no one demands beauty. This seems nearly holy. He shows you where the bronze is split near the rim. He can braze it, perhaps, though the tone may never be sweet. Some say a cracked bell should be buried like a person, because its voice has died. Others melt it down and cast it anew, trusting fire to teach it another song. No one can quite agree whether metal remembers its first shape. You think of the great bell in your tower, of its patient darkness, and you hope it never needs such mercy. You pay him with the priest's coin and agree to return later. The dog, meanwhile, has seated himself beside the fishmonger's board and adopted an expression of tragic starvation. The fishmonger tells him to leave. The dog blinks. The fishmonger, being human, loses. A scrap changes hands, or rather leaves a hand and enters a mouth with impressive speed. You eat your own bread near the edge of the green, standing beneath an awning while a thin drizzle begins to fall. The smoked fish is salty and strong, and the onion bites clean through the cold. Around you, the market thickens into its daily rhythm. A mother bargains for linen. A monk buys ink powder and pretends not to inspect the honey cakes. A shepherd offers fleeces still smelling of field and sheep. A barber surgeon lays out razors and little bowls for bleeding. Cheerful as a man who has never been asked why his cure resembles the injury. The drizzle turns the trampled grass dark. Mud climbs hems and boots. You watch coins pass from palm to palm, hear promises made, doubts muttered, weights tested, blessings requested. This is the village's wider heartbeat, less solemn than the bell, but just as necessary. Here, people learn who has grain, who has debt, who is marrying, who is limping, whose cow is carved, whose cousin saw a light over the marsh and refuses to describe it without an audience. By noon, your cloak smells of wet wool again, and the dog has acquired the look of one who has made useful friends. You tuck your hands into your sleeves and turn toward the walled town road, where the toll-keeper's booth stands like a small wooden judgment. A cart passes you, its wheel wobbling faintly, though still holding for now. You notice it because people who listen to bells also listen to creaks. Beyond the market, clouds gather darker over the town gate. The road ahead shines with rain, and the first cold drops begin to strike your hood. You pull your cloak closer, call softly to the dog, though he is not needed calling all day, and follow the line of carts toward shelter. The rain reaches you before the town gate does, not as a noble storm with thunder and banners, but as a thin, needling drizzle that slips beneath your hood and finds the warm places at the back of your neck. The road darkens. Cart wheels bite deeper into the mud. Horses lower their heads and steam gently through their nostrils, looking as patient and disappointed as monks served weak ale. You walk with your shoulders rounded, one hand keeping your cloak closed, while the brown dog trots beside you, as if weather is merely another tax he refuses to acknowledge. Ahead, the town wall rises from the grey afternoon, built of rough stone patched with timber where older damage has been repaired. Moss clings between the blocks. The gatehouse straddles the road with two squat towers, an oak door, and an iron-studded wicket just wide enough to remind every traveller that entrance is a privilege, not a comfort. A torch burns under the arch, hissing in the damp. Above it hangs a small bell used by the watch, duller than your own village bell but respectable in its way. Like a cousin who tries. A line of carts waits before the gate. One carries sacks of barley under soaked canvas. Another holds baskets of onions, two sleepy children, and a hen that seems deeply suspicious of urban life. A merchant in a dark cloak complains about the delay to anyone trapped nearby. The gate wardens, protected by the ancient power of not hurrying, inspect goods, count wheels, demand tolls, and ask questions that always sound as though the answers are disappointing. You shelter beneath the outer arch where the stone smells of rain, old straw, horsehide, and smoke from the brazier. Water drips steadily from the murder holes overhead, though today they murder only your patience. The dog shakes himself once, thoroughly, and everyone near him becomes briefly wetter. One guard mutters a blessing that does not sound entirely official. The guard nearest the brazier is named Osric, a broad man with a red nose, a fur-lined hood, and hands wrapped around a wooden cup. He recognizes you from feast day processions and nods toward your cloak. Bell ringer, gate sleeper, you answer. He smiles without showing teeth. Gate watcher, is that what we call it on wet days? This is almost friendship. You give him the priest's message for the town clerk, folded beneath wax now softened slightly by damp. He tucks it into a leather pouch and gestures you closer to the brazier. Heat licks at your fingers. Your sleeves steam faintly. The rain beyond the arch blurs the road and market fields into one grey smear. Waiting becomes its own occupation. People lean, shuffle, sigh, check knots, cover baskets, pat animals, and pretend they're not listening to every conversation around them. A cartwheel near the front gives a low wooden groan as the driver nudges it forward. You glance at it. The iron rim is loose, dark water shining between rim and wood, not broken yet, but thinking about it. In this weather, even wheels develop opinions. Beside you, an old woman unwraps a bundle of herbs and holds it over the brazier smoke. Rue, rosemary, and a little mugwort, by the smell of it. She says it keeps fever from clinging after cold rain. Some swear mugwort tucked in the shoe prevents weariness on long roads. Others say it only makes the shoe smell like a hedge. No one can quite agree, but several travellers lean subtly nearer to the smoke, just in case. The talk under the arch turns toward the relic recently brought through town. You hear it first from the onion cart driver, who claims a monk arrived 2 nights ago carrying a little silver casket wrapped in blue silk. Inside, he says, was a finger bone of St. Cuthbert's cousin, or perhaps St. Cuthbert himself, or perhaps not Cuthbert at all, but a holy man whose name had suffered in translation. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the bone cured a feverish child, frightened a thief into confession, or merely drew enough offerings to repair the abbey roof. Osric snorts into his cup. Too many fingers for one saint, if you ask me. The old woman with the herbs frowns. Saints are generous. Generous with fingers, miracles are not accounts ledgers. This settles nothing, but it warms the arch more than the brazier. You think of the pilgrims from the morning, their badges chiming softly, and the sheep's tooth that may or may not have healed fevers. In this world, holiness travels in boxes, bones, scraps of cloth, drops of oil, and stories repeated until they shine smooth. It is easy to mock until someone you love is sick, or the harvest fails, or a child coughs through the night. Then even a doubtful relic can seem kinder than an empty hand. Rain drums more firmly now on the wooden hoarding above the gate. A clerk appears with an ink-stained thumb and a hood pulled low. He sits at a little table beneath the arch, opens a wax tablet, and begins scratching names, goods, and tolls with a stylus. The tablet already bears ghosts of earlier marks, smoothed and reused, because parchment is too dear for every turnip and grievance. A man bringing in dyed cloth must pay more than a woman carrying eggs. A seller of salt complains that his load is smaller than it looks. The clerk says salt is always smaller after payment. Your dog sits beside the brazier and looks into the flames. Osric notices him. Yours. No one can prove it. Wise answer. A boy from the onion cart reaches to pat the dog, then draws back when his mother warns that strange dogs may carry fleas, curses, or both. The dog, hearing no clear accusation involving food, remains serene. A sudden clatter echoes from the road behind you. The loose-rimmed cartwheel has slipped deeper into a rut, and the driver is climbing down with the stiff hopelessness of a man about to discover the full personality of mud. Several people turn to watch. No one moves at first. In bad weather, helpfulness must overcome dampness, and dampness is persuasive. At last, 2 guards, a pilgrim, and you step out from the arch. Rain taps your hood. Mud sucks at your boots. You help lift the cart enough for the driver to wedge a stone beneath the axle. Your hands slide on wet wood. The iron rim has not yet come free, but it wobbles badly. It will hold to the yard, the driver says, in the tone of a man trying to bless a lie. Some swear wheels listen when praised, says the pilgrim. Then tell it is beautiful, you say. The driver pats the wheel. Fine wheel. Noble wheel. Wheel of rare character. The wheel creaks in a way that suggests it remains undecided. Back under the gate, your cloak is heavier, your fingers numb again, and the brazier feels like a small saint with coals for relics. Osric offers you a swallow of weak ale from a jug. It tastes sour, smoky, and wonderful. Medieval hospitality often arrives in cups one should not inspect too closely. At length, the line shifts. The tolls are counted. The clerk seals a note. The rain softens to mist. Through the inner arch you can see the town lane, shining with water, bordered by workshops, hanging signs, and upper stories leaning so close they nearly gossip across the street. Somewhere inside, a handbell rings for a sale. Somewhere else, a hammer strikes metal. The world continues, damp but stubborn. You collect the return token from the clerk, nod to Osric, and step through the gate with the dog at your heel. Behind you, the doubtful relic is still being debated beneath the arch. Ahead, the road slopes toward the monastery lane, where the guest house bell waits to be rung before evening. The rain clings to every stone. The day grows quieter. You walk on. You leave the town's wet lanes by the smaller eastern postern, where the wall gives way to a road bordered by bare hedges and winter fields. The rain has thinned into mist, and the world seems rubbed soft at the edges: thatch, stone, cart tracks, tree limbs. Even the dogs narrow back as he trots beside you with the dignity of a creature who has secured several scraps and expects history to remember him kindly. Behind you, the gatehouse bell gives one small, dull note as the wardens close the wicket against the damp, and you think of your own village bell, deeper and warmer, waiting in its tower like a sleeping ox. The road to the monastery is not long, but it feels older than the town road, as if fewer wheels and more prayers have passed over it. A row of pollarded willows leans beside a drainage ditch. Their cut branches rise like blunt fingers into the grey air. In the ditch, water moves brown and slow around dead leaves. A wooden cross stands where the lane bends, hung with 2 faded ribbons and a little pilgrim token shaped like a scallop shell. Some swear the cross marks the place where a blind man once heard abbey bells and found the path home. Others say it marks where a mule refused to move until blessed, which feels equally believable. No one can quite agree whether beasts are more stubborn before or after holiness. By late afternoon, the monastery walls appear through the mist. They are lower than a castle's, but steadier somehow, built not to threaten but to endure. Beyond them, roofs gather around the church like folded hands. Smoke rises from the bakehouse. A line of bare fruit trees stands in the orchard. The abbey bell tower lifts above the cloister, square and pale, and just as you look up, a bell sounds for the hour. Its voice is clearer than your village bell, less earthy, more silver, and it spreads over the wet fields with calm authority. You stop without meaning to. A bell from another tower always feels like hearing someone speak your language with a different childhood. At the gatehouse, a lay brother peers through the grill. His face is long, his eyebrows heavy, and his expression suggests that visitors are a spiritual exercise he has not chosen. You give your name, the priest's errand, and the clerk's token. The brother studies the dog. He is not on the message. He says, "He cannot read." You answer. The brother considers this and opens the gate. Inside, the monastery smells of wet wool, baking bread, damp stone, beeswax, and cabbage. It is not the fragrance poets usually choose for devotion, but devotion has always had to live near kitchens. You cross the outer court, where novices carry baskets. A gardener shakes rain from his hood, and 2 chickens escape supervision with quiet determination. Near the guest house door, a small bell hangs from an iron bracket. It is used to announce travellers, beggars, messengers, and those uncertain souls who are not quite any of these. The lay brother nods toward it. Ring once. You look at the bell. It is modest, darkened by weather, with a rope no longer than your forearm. A guest bell, not made for glory. Still, every bell deserves respect. You take the rope gently and sound one clear note. The note trembles beneath the covered walkway and disappears into the court. Almost at once, movement answers it. A novice looks up. A door opens. Somewhere within, sandals whisper over stone. A monk in a black habit emerges from the guest house, his sleeves tucked back, a ring of iron keys hanging from his belt. His tonsured head shines faintly in the damp light. "Peace to you," he says. "And to this house," you reply, because even if you are cold, muddy, and followed by an unofficial dog, manners are cheaper than penance. He brings you beneath the porch and into the guest hall, where the rushes are fresher than Avelines and mixed with sweet flag. A fire burns low in a stone hearth. Benches line the walls. A long table holds wooden cups, a jug of small ale, a loaf under linen, and a bowl of salt carefully covered. Salt is watched in such places almost like silver, which tells you much about both salt and monks. The dog is not allowed inside. This is explained with regret by the monk and accepted with theatrical sorrow by the dog, who lies under the porch where he can still monitor all bread-related developments. You remove your wet cloak and steam rises faintly from your shoulders. Your hands ache from cold, from rope, from cartwood, from the day's many small negotiations. The monk gives you a cup of warmed ale with a sprig of something bitter floating in it. "For the damp," he says. You drink. It tastes like ale that has lost an argument with a hedge, but warmth spreads through you, and you are grateful. The monastery moves by bells more completely than your village does. Bells for matins in darkness, lauds at daybreak, prime, terce, sext, nun, vespers, compline, bells for meals, bells for work, bells for silence, bells that gather men from copying desks, gardens, kitchens, infirmary beds, and cloister walks. Here, time is not merely rung, it is carved into the day like grooves worn into stone steps. You feel oddly at home, though also slightly inspected. The monk with the keys asks after your priest, your village, the state of the road, and whether the market tinker has mended the procession handbell. You explain that he promises usefulness without beauty. The monk nods gravely, as if this describes half the human condition. In the guest hall's far corner sits a small shelf of objects left by travellers: a broken comb, a patched glove, a wooden spoon, 3 pilgrim badges, and a little clay ampulla meant to hold holy water or oil from a shrine. Some swear such ampullae protect a traveller from fever if worn at the throat. Others say they mostly protect the seller from poverty. Even now, it is hard to tell whether doubt itself is a sin or merely a weatherproof cloak. A bell rings again outside, not the guest bell this time, but one from within the abbey church. At once the monks in the passage change pace. Their conversations fold shut. Their bodies turn as naturally as flowers toward light. You watch them move along the cloister walk, dark figures in a row, their habits brushing stone, their steps soft from long practice. Candlelight begins to gather in the church windows. The key monk asks whether you will help with the outer bell before supper, since the usual brother has taken to his bed with a cough. You agree before remembering how your shoulders feel. A bell ringer who refuses a bell is like a baker refusing dough, possible but suspicious. He leads you through a side passage smelling of wax and cold plaster. The outer bell hangs in a small turret above the guest court, reached by a ladder that creaks in the language of old wood. You climb carefully. At the top, wind presses mist against your face. Below, the monastery spreads in quiet order: cloister, kitchen, infirmary, orchard, stable, guest house, all arranged as if the world might be made gentler by straight paths and regular prayer. You take the rope. This bell is lighter than yours, quicker to answer. You ring the summons for guests and supper, 3 measured notes spaced with care. The sound falls into the courtyard, over the porch where the dog lifts his head, across the wet garden beds and the silent fruit trees, out toward the road where evening gathers. For a moment, you stand above it all, holding the rope, listening to the last note dissolve. You're neither monk nor merchant nor pilgrim, only the keeper of a sound passing through cold air. The day has carried you from tower to hearth, from market to gate, from rain to monastery walls, and everywhere bells have stitched the hours together. When you climb down, supper waits coarse bread, cabbage pottage, a little cheese, and silence observed until a reading begins. You sit among travellers under the low beams of the guest hall. The dog receives, by mysterious channels, a crust near the door. Candlelight trembles on cups and faces. Outside, the mist deepens. Inside, the bell's last vibration seems to rest in your bones. After supper, the guest hall settles into the kind of silence that is not empty, only shared. Wooden spoons scrape bowls softly. A monk reads from a lectern near the fire, his voice low and even, each Latin word moving through the room like a slow fish beneath dark water. You understand only pieces, but the sound itself seems to warm the air. Around you, travellers sit with heads bowed, though whether from devotion, weariness, or cabbage pottage is hard to say. Medieval holiness often has to work with full stomachs and poor sleep. The monk with the iron keys comes for you when the reading ends. He lifts one finger to his lips, not sternly, but as a reminder that the monastery after supper belongs to quieter creatures. Prayer, smoke, candle flame, and mice with excellent knowledge of the walls. You rise from the bench, pull your cloak about your shoulders, and follow him from the guest hall into a passage where the stones shine faintly with damp. The corridor smells of beeswax and ink. That is how you know you're near the scriptorium before you see it. The door stands half open, and within, 3 scribes bend over slanted desks under the soft yellow light of candles. Their shaved crowns gleam. Their sleeves are tied back. Their fingers are stained black and brown from ink made of oak galls, iron salts, and patient stirring. The room is warmer than the passage, not by much, but enough that the windows are clouded with breath. You pause at the threshold. The key monk lets you look, perhaps because he knows bell ringers and scribes are cousins in the service of repetition. One copies time into sound, the other copies words into skin. A young scribe draws a red initial at the start of a page, his brush so fine it seems made from a single obedient hair, beside him. An older monk scratches lines of text with a quill, pausing now and then to sharpen the nib with a little knife. Parchment lies stacked beneath weights, pale and slightly rippled, made from scraped animal skin, costly enough that mistakes become moral events. Some swear a careless scribe must answer in the next world for every blot he leaves in holy text. Others say the greater punishment is hearing the librarian sigh in this one. On a side shelf sit pumice stone, horn-ink pots, a dish of sand for drying letters, and a little lump of green pigment wrapped in cloth. Nearby, a beeswax candle burns cleaner than the smoky tallow lamps of cottages, giving off that faint honeyed scent you noticed in the church. Beeswax is dear, saved for altar, choir, and careful work. The scribes treat the candles almost like guests of rank. No one wastes a flame here. The monk with the keys gestures you onward, but an older scribe looks up and recognizes the rope burns across your palms. "Bellman," he murmurs. "Letterman," you whisper back. His mouth twitches. It may be a smile. In monasteries, even humour wears soft shoes. He beckons you closer and shows you a margin where he has drawn, in tiny brown ink, a rabbit blowing a horn at a startled hound. It has nothing to do with the text. No one can quite agree whether such little creatures in the margins are jokes, warnings, lessons, or simply the places where tired minds escape after too many psalms. You stare at the rabbit and feel a deep respect. Any rabbit brave enough to trouble a hound deserves illumination. Past the scriptorium lies the infirmary passage, where the air changes from ink and wax to herbs and boiled linen. Bundles hang from beams sage, betony, yarrow, lavender, and rue. A pot simmers near the hearth. A lay brother sits by a coughing monk, rubbing his chest with a salve of goose grease and ground herbs. You've smelled similar remedies in village halls and market stalls, but here each jar bears a neat label, as if writing can persuade illness to behave. The infirmerer, a narrow man with kind eyes and a nose reddened by cold, shows the key monk a small clay cup. Hyssop and honey, he says, for Brother Anselm's throat. Some swear hyssop clears the chest because Scripture praises it. Others say honey does the real work and hyssop takes the credit. Even now, it is hard to tell whether plants care for theology, but the coughing brother accepts the cup with gratitude, which is often the beginning of cure. You are given a small smear of salve for your rope-burned palms. It smells of beeswax, fat, and something sharp. The infirmerer says it may draw out soreness. You thank him. Medieval medicine, you have learned, is a cabinet with 3 shelves herbs, prayers, and confidence. When all 3 fail, someone suggests bleeding, and everyone pretends this is a fresh idea. At the end of the passage, the key monk pauses by a closed door. Voices murmur inside, low and quick. One voice you recognize from the guest hall, Brother Matthew, the monk who bought ink powder at market and pretended not to inspect honey cakes. The key monk's face changes only slightly, but in monastery light, slight changes are loud. He keeps accounts, the monk says. You nod, because that explains everything and nothing. Those who tell tales in villages often say monasteries are places of perfect peace, but you have seen enough doors, keys, ledgers, and locked cupboards to know peace needs management. Grain must be measured, candles must be counted, visitors must be fed, relics must be guarded, coins must be entered into books by men who may be holy, tired, ambitious, forgetful, or hungry. No one can quite agree whether Brother Matthew is too careful, too curious, or merely too fond of knowing where every penny sleeps. The key monk leads you at last into a small chamber where the monastery's lesser bells are kept when not in use, a handbell for processions, a cracked table bell awaiting repair, and 2 bright little altar bells wrapped in linen. He asks your opinion on the crack in the table bell. You lift it carefully and tap the rim with your nail. The sound comes thin, like a voice after weeping. It will ring, you whisper, but it will never pretend nothing happened. The monk considers this, then nods. Few of us do. You place the bell back on its cloth. Compline comes soon after. You stand at the rear of the church while the monks chant the last office before sleep. Their voices rise beneath the stone vaulting, not loudly, but with a steadiness that seems older than the walls. Candles burn along the choir. Shadows lean into corners. The scent of wax, wool, cold stone, and damp leather gathers around you like a blanket. Outside, the dog gives one small bark, then quiets, perhaps corrected by an angel, or more likely by a kitchen boy with a crust. When the final prayer ends, one bell rings, just one, soft, measured, and complete. It passes through the church, through your ribs, through the long tired road of the day. You think of ink drying on parchment, of herbs hanging from beams, of Brother Matthew's closed door, of the cracked bell that cannot hide its wound, and of your own village tower waiting beyond fields and mist. You return to the guest hall and lie down on a straw pallet beneath a wool blanket that smells faintly of smoke and many previous travellers. The rushes whisper when you shift. The half-burned candle near the wall gutters low. Somewhere in the monastery, a key turns in a lock. You close your eyes, and in the dark behind them, small bells, bronze bells, written letters, and candle flames drift together until they are almost the same thing. Before first light, the monastery bell wakes you not like a shout, but like a hand placed gently on the shoulder of the dark. Its sound moves through the guest hall, through the smoke-stained beams, through the wool blanket tucked beneath your chin. For a moment you do not know where you are. The straw pallet beneath you is unfamiliar, the ceiling too low, the air too full of beeswax and cabbage and damp stone. Then the memory of the road returns market mud, the gatehouse brazier, the guest bell, the scriptorium rabbit raising its little horn against the hound. You open your eyes. The candle near the wall has burned into a small pool of wax. Around you, other travellers stir. Someone coughs. Someone murmurs a prayer. Someone searches blindly for a shoe and finds, from the sound of it, another person's elbow. Medieval mornings have a way of making everyone humble before breakfast. You rise quietly, folding the blanket as well as sleep-stiff fingers allow. Your palms still smell faintly of the infirmarer's salve, sharp and waxy. The soreness has eased, though whether from herbs, prayer, grease, or the simple mercy of time is difficult to judge. No one can quite agree whether remedies work better when named in Latin, but everyone agrees they cost more. Outside, the guest court lies blue with frost. The dog is curled beneath the porch, nose tucked under tail, one white paw visible like a small flag of surrender. When you step near, he opens one eye, decides you remain associated with bread, and rises. His stretch is long, serious, and nearly religious. The key monk gives you a heel of yesterday's loaf, a strip of hard cheese, and a blessing for the road. Brother Matthew stands nearby with an account tablet under one arm, his ink-stained fingers folded in his sleeves. He smiles too quickly when your eyes meet. You cannot say why it troubles you. Some men smile from kindness, some from habit, and some because a closed door has taught them the usefulness of looking harmless. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether Brother Matthew's hiding anything at all, or whether travellers simply enjoy giving suspicion a cloak. You leave by the eastern gate with 3 pilgrims and a carter whose empty wagon rattles behind a narrow horse. The forest track begins beyond the orchard, where the monastery's last wall falls behind and the land lifts toward old trees. Frost silvers the grass. Each step breaks tiny crystals under your boots. Your breath hangs pale before you, and the dog trots ahead, occasionally turning back as if checking whether humans are still slow. The forest receives you gradually. First come scattered trees, then thicker trunks, then a woven ceiling of bare branches against a whitening sky. The path is marked by cart ruts and hoof prints, but under the trees it narrows, bending around roots, stones, and dark puddles glazed with ice. Moss climbs the shaded side of oaks. Holly grows in stiff green clusters. Somewhere a woodpecker taps, precise as a clerk counting coins. You walk in quiet company. One pilgrim wears a broad hat with badges pinned to it, a shell, a little cross, a stamped image of a saint holding what might be a book or a loaf. Another carries a rosary made of dark seeds, clicking softly between gloved fingers. The third, a woman with a scarlet hood faded by weather, has tied a small charm to her staff, a blue bead, a twist of thread, and a scrap of parchment folded too small to read. She notices you looking. For safe passage, she says. You nod. The priest would prefer a medal blessed at the altar. The old women in the village would prefer rowan wood. The carter says iron nails in the wagon bed keep ill-wishing away, unless the nails are stolen, in which case they invite twice as much trouble. Some swear rowan protects against witches, iron against spirits, and blue beads against the evil eye. Others say a good cloak and a full purse do better. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the world is more dangerous than people think, or whether people think so many things because the world is dangerous enough. The first shrine appears at a fork in the track, a small wooden box fixed to a tree, sheltering a painted image of the Virgin, her blue robe faded by rain. Beneath it lie offerings, a bent pin, 2 hazelnuts, a thread of red wool, a crust of bread hardened by frost, and a tiny candle stub. The pilgrims pause. One crosses himself. The woman in the scarlet hood touches the box, then presses her fingers to her lips. You bow your head, while the dog sniffs the bread offering with deep professional interest. Leave it. You whisper. He looks at you with disappointment, so pure it should be recorded by scribes. The track beyond the shrine drops into a hollow where mist collects in pale folds. Here the forest feels older, quieter. The roots twist above the ground like knotted hands. A raven calls once from somewhere unseen. The sound falls through the branches and vanishes. You remember a tale told by Avelin's hearth, that bells cannot always be heard in deep forest because old trees drink sound through their bark. No one can quite agree whether this is true, though it would explain why woods seem to keep secrets better than villages. At mid-morning, light begins to filter between the trunks. It touches frost on bracken, turns spider webs into silver thread, and brightens the pilgrims' badges until they flash like small coins. The carter's wagon jolts over a root with a wooden complaint. He mutters to the wheel, calling it sturdy, faithful, and better than it looks. You think of the loose-rimmed cart at the town gate, and wonder how long praise can hold a wheel together. The pilgrims speak softly of destinations. One hopes to reach a shrine where a saint's well cures sore eyes. Another travels in thanks for surviving fever. The woman in the scarlet hood carries a little packet of hair from her child, to be laid near an altar so the saints may remember the child's name. You do not ask whether the child lives or waits in earth. Some questions are doors. Not every door should be opened on a cold morning. You share your bread and cheese when the path widens near a fallen log. The dog receives nothing until he sits, which he does with exaggerated virtue. The carter produces dried apples from a pouch. One pilgrim offers a pinch of salt from a twist of cloth, guarded as carefully as silver. You eat with cold fingers, listening to the forest drip as the frost loosens. Somewhere, far behind, perhaps from the monastery, perhaps only in memory. A bell sounds the next hour. It reaches you faintly. Broken by trees, a bronze thread stretched thin through the wood. You stand again and continue along the track. The mud here is hidden beneath leaves, which is a trick rather than an improvement. Your boot slips once, and you catch yourself on a birch trunk, leaving a dark handprint on pale bark. The carter says birch is lucky for beginnings. The pilgrim with the seed rosary says ash is better for journeys. The woman in the scarlet hood says any tree that keeps you from landing face first in mud deserves gratitude. This is difficult to dispute. By noon, the forest thins. Ahead, the road rises toward open heath, where a wayside fire sends smoke into the grey air. 2 watchmen sit near it with spears propped against a stone. guarding the crossing more from loneliness than danger. Beyond them, fields and low hills wait under the pale winter sun. You pause at the edge of the trees and look back. The forest stands quiet, full of shrines, charms, roots, old tales, and the fading echo of bells. The dog steps forward first, choosing the fire. You follow, carrying the cold of the forest in your cloak and the sound of distant bronze in your bones. You come out from the trees as the pale sun lifts just high enough to show how little warmth it intends to offer. The open heath spreads before you in rough brown grass, low thorn, patches of frost, and shallow pools that hold the sky like dull pewter. Behind you, the forest keeps its secrets under bare branches. Ahead, the watchfire smokes beside the crossing, where two tracks meet near a worn standing stone and a ditch bridged by split logs. The dog reaches the fire first, of course, and presents himself to the watchman with the weary confidence of a knight returning from crusade. One of the men laughs softly and breaks a corner from his bread. The dog accepts this tribute with proper gravity, then turns to look at you as if he has arranged hospitality for the entire party. The watchmen sit beneath a patched awning stretched between two poles, their cloaks drawn close, their spears leaning nearby. One has a beard beaded with damp. The other wears a leather cap with a feather that has surrendered to rain. They are meant to watch for thieves, wandering soldiers, loose cattle, and anything else that might turn a quiet road troublesome. Mostly, they watch smoke rise and travellers arrive hungry. You settle near the fire, grateful for the heat that reaches your knees and cheeks. The carter pulls his horse aside and rubs its neck. The pilgrims lower themselves onto a fallen beam, making the small noises of people whose bones have become aware of a distance. You unwrap Avelin's smoked fish, now softened at the edges by travel, and share what remains with the others. Coarse bread goes around. Someone produces a heel of cheese. One watchman adds a few onions roasted nash. Blackened outside and sweet within. Medieval feasting, you think, is often just hunger meeting heat and deciding to be thankful. Smoke curls into your hood. Your cloak begins to steam. Your fingers loosen around the bread. The dog lies close enough to the fire to risk becoming a saint of singed fur, but not close enough to learn anything from it. The watchman with the damp beard asks where you come from. You tell him of the village tower, the market green, the gatehouse rain, and the monastery guest bell. He listens with respect, because bells matter on lonely roads. A bell can call help, mark prayer, warn of fire, announce death, or simply tell a scattered world that someone is still awake and keeping count. He points to the standing stone beyond the ditch. It rises crooked from the earth, waist high, grey with lichen. A little iron cross has been fixed into a crack at its top, perhaps to make an old thing behave itself. They say that stone walks at midnight, he says. The pilgrim with the seed rosary crosses himself. The carter snorts. No one can quite agree whether it walks to the stream or to the church. The watchman continues, enjoying himself. But it always returns before dawn. Convenient, you say. A disciplined stone. The woman in the scarlet hood smiles into her cup, better than most men. The second watchman insists his grandfather saw it move once during a fog, though his grandfather also claimed he could cure toothache by whispering into a mouse hole. Some swear old stones remember the people who raised them before the churches came. Others say fog, ale, and grandfathers are a powerful mixture. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such tales are meant to frighten travellers or keep them sitting by the fire long enough to share news. A small pot hangs from an iron hook above the flames, simmering with water, oats, and a few herbs. The watchmen call it stew, though it is nearer to hot confusion. They offer you a wooden cup of it, and you drink carefully. It tastes of smoke, onion, and the idea of nourishment. Still, it warms your chest, and warmth has been the day's truest luxury. Beyond the fire, the road lies quiet. A crow settles on the standing stone, making it look less haunted and more annoyed. The carter checks his wheels, tapping the rims, testing the pegs. One wheel gives a tired creak. He praises it at once, calling it honest and stout. You begin to suspect medieval transport depends largely on flattery. The pilgrims speak of the road ahead. By evening, if the mud allows, you may reach the manor fields near your own village lands. There will be a court sitting soon, the watchman says, because two brothers dispute a strip of meadow. A tenant has failed to mend a hedge, and someone's pig has been accused of trespass with unusual persistence. The law, like the weather, comes whether invited or not. You rest your back against a log and listen. Wind moves over the heath in long, low breaths. The fire pops softly. The pilgrims' badges click when they shift. The dog dreams, paws twitching, perhaps chasing fishmongers through paradise. For a while no one speaks. The silence is not awkward. It is the old road silence, shared by those who have walked enough to let quiet sit among them. Then the watchman with the feathered cap tells of a bell once heard under the ground near a ruined chapel 3 miles north. He says shepherds heard it on All Souls' Night, ringing faintly beneath the turf. Some claimed it was a buried church swallowed by sin. Others said it was only water moving under stones. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether anyone dug there, though everyone agrees digging after midnight is foolish unless you are paid, blessed, or already dead. You listen with your cup between your palms. A buried bell troubles you more than a walking stone. Bells are made to speak into air, not earth. You imagine bronze under roots, its mouth full of soil, still trying to mark the hours for no congregation but worms. The thought is sad, but not sharp. It passes like smoke. Near the edge of the fire, the woman in the scarlet hood unwraps the small packet she carries, only enough to check it remains dry. A curl of hair, pale and fine, glimmers inside linen. She touches it once, then folds it away again. No one comments. The watchmen look into the flames. The carter adjusts the strap on his pack. You feel the quiet tenderness of the moment settle over the group, softer than any blanket. To give it room, you rise and walk a few steps toward the ditch. The ground is wet, the grass flattened by hooves. A little roadside shrine stands near the bridge. Nothing more than a post with a niche and a tiny carved saint inside, his nose worn away by weather or kisses. Someone has left a crust of bread there, and this time the dog does not notice. You touch the post lightly. The wood is cold and slick. You think of how many small guardians line these roads' crosses at bends, saints in boxes, charms on staffs, bells in towers, fires at crossings, old stories hung like lanterns over fear. People call them foolish, holy, necessary, or all three. Perhaps they are simply ways of saying that the road is long, the night is dark, and no one wants to walk entirely alone. When you return to the fire, the sky has begun to lower toward afternoon. The watchmen stamp their feet and add another branch. One gives you news from the North Road. A wheelwright is working near the manor yard. The Lord Steward is in a sour mood, and the storehouse keys have gone missing twice this month, though found both times in places no one admits using. Brother Matthew's quick smile returns to your mind, though you do not know why. Suspicion, once fed, follows like a second dog. You gather your cloak, now smoky but warmer. The pilgrims rise. The carter clicks to his horse. The dog shakes ash from his fur and looks pleased with himself. You thank the watchman for fire and food. The one with the feathered cap tells you to listen for bells if fog comes down. Sound carries strangely over the heath, and sometimes the nearest bell is not the one you hear. You step back onto the road. Behind you, the watchfire shrinks into smoke and ember. Ahead, the track leads toward fields, manor hedges, iron keys, and the slow business of village order. The standing stone remains where it is, for now, patient and crooked beneath the crow. You walk on, carrying the smell of ash in your cloak, the taste of onion on your tongue, and the hush of shared legends in your ears. You leave the watchfire behind, and the warmth fades from your cloak step by step, as if the road itself is gently reclaiming it. The heath gives way to fields divided by low hedges and narrow ditches, each boundary marking not only land but memory who sowed here, who argued there, who borrowed and never quite returned. The sky hangs pale and stretched thin, and the wind moves across the ground with a steady patience that feels older than any bell you've ever rung. The dog walks closer now, less interested in adventure than in the promise of arrival. His ears flick at distant sounds, crows, a cart, the faint clink of metal. You follow the track as it narrows again, passing a broken stile where one rung has been replaced by a crooked branch. Someone has tied a scrap of wool to it, perhaps to mark the repair, perhaps as a quiet charm. Some swear knots hold more than wood together. Others say they only remind people where not to trip. No one can quite agree. But the knot holds, and so does the stile. By late afternoon, the manor fields come into view. They stretch in long strips, some freshly turned, some lying fallow, some dotted with stubble that glints faintly under the weak light. Beyond them rises the manor yard, enclosed by a timber fence and marked by a gate hung with iron hinges that complain even in stillness. A cluster of buildings gathers within the Lord's Hall, the barn, the storehouse, and a small chapel whose bell is far too small to impress you but tries its best. As you approach, you hear voices firm, overlapping, not yet angry but circling that direction. The manor court is already in motion. A group of villagers stands near the hall door, cloaks drawn tight, boots planted in mud that has been churned into a kind of reluctant soup. The reeve stands at the centre, holding a staff that gives him the appearance of authority, though his expression suggests authority is a burden rather than a pleasure. You step closer, nodding to familiar faces. A woman you recognize from the market adjusts her shawl and whispers that two brothers are disputing a strip of meadow. Again, the same strip as last year, though last year it was wider or narrower, depending on who tells it. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the land has changed or only the memory of it. The brothers stand opposite one another, boots sunk in the same mud, each pointing toward the same patch of ground as if the truth might rise from it if accused properly. One claims his father marked the boundary with stones. The other insists the stones were moved during a flood. The reeve listens with the slow patience of a man who has heard this argument so often it has begun to feel like a seasonal event. Nearby, a tenant shifts from foot to foot, waiting his turn. His problem is simpler but no less heavy: a hedge left unmended, allowing a neighbour's pig to wander freely and with great enthusiasm. The pig itself stands tethered nearby, looking entirely unrepentant. You linger at the edge of the gathering, not quite part of it, not quite outside. The dog sits beside you, observing the proceedings with the calm of someone who has no property to dispute and no hedge to mend. For a moment, you envy him. The steward emerges from the hall, wrapped in a cloak that seems too fine for the weather. His face carries the tightness of a man who has misplaced something important and suspects everyone equally. He speaks briefly with the reeve, his voice low but edged. You catch fragment storehouse, keys, twice now, no excuse. The words settle into the air like ash. Keys matter here. Iron keys, heavy and cold, opening doors that hold grain, tools. Winter stores the difference between comfort and hunger. To lose them once is carelessness. To lose them twice is a story waiting to grow teeth. Some whisper that keys have a way of wandering when the cold deepens and stores grow thin. Others say wandering keys are often guided by very steady hands. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the steward's worry is for theft, mischief, or something quieter and more human. The court continues. The reeve measures the disputed meadow with careful steps, counting under his breath. The brothers follow, each watching the other more closely than the ground. The tenant with the hedge is instructed to mend it before the next bell of morning, or pay a fine that will sting longer than the cold. The pig is led away, still unrepentant. You move toward the storehouse, drawn by habit and curiosity. Its door is thick oak, banded with iron, the lock large enough to suggest importance even to those who cannot read. A boy stands nearby, turning a small key over in his hands, though it clearly does not belong to this door. He looks up as you approach. They say the big key went missing again, he says, eager for the weight of news. And did it walk away on its own, you ask? He shrugs. Some swear it does, like the stone on the heath. You smile faintly. Then it should be back by morning. The boy nods, satisfied. In a world where stones walk and bells ring under the ground, a wandering key feels almost reasonable. From somewhere within the manor yard, a small bell rings thin, insistent, calling workers from the far fields. It lacks the depth of your tower bell, but it carries well enough across the open land. You listen to it fade, feeling the familiar pull in your chest, the quiet recognition of sound shaping time. The sun dips lower, turning the sky from pale to a muted gold that catches on the edges of roofs and the tips of bare branches. The court begins to break apart. Villagers drift away in pairs and small groups, their voices softening as they return to their own concerns, fires to tend, animals to feed, bread to bake, stories to continue. You stand for a moment longer, watching the steward speak again with the reeve, his hand resting near his belt where the keys should hang. His expression has not softened. Suspicion, once planted, grows quickly in winter soil. The dog nudges your leg, reminding you that standing still is not the same as arriving. You turn from the manor yard and follow the path that leads back toward your village, where the bell tower waits and the day's last duties gather like shadows at the edge of light. Behind you, the manor settles into evening. Ahead, the road bends gently, familiar now, carrying you home through the fading gold and the first quiet hints of night. You have not gone far from the manor yard when the road gives a low wooden crack behind you, followed by the kind of silence that makes everyone nearby turn around. It is not a loud sound, not enough to frighten birds from hedges or make horses rear, but it carries a weary finality, as if something has been patient all day and has now decided patience is overrated. You look back. A cart has slumped near the ditch, one side tilted into the mud. Its left wheel leans outward at a sad angle, the iron rim half loose, the wooden spokes dark with wet. The carter stands beside it with both hands on his hips, gazing down as though the wheel has betrayed not only him but several generations of honest ancestors. Beside the cart, a small grey horse lowers its head and begins cropping at frosted grass. A apparently relieved to stop participating in human plans. The dog looks at the cart, then at you. His expression says this is not strictly your problem. Unfortunately, your feet are already turning. You walk back through the damp lane, cloak brushing the hedge. 2 boys come running from the manor gate, delighted by disaster in the way only children can be. The carter mutters something about the road, the weather, the maker of the wheel, and possibly all saints who failed to intervene. You crouch beside the damage. The hub is not shattered, praise be, but the rim has slipped, and one spoke has cracked near the joint. It nearly held, the carter says. That is what failing things often say. He gives you a tired look. Then he laughs, because the alternative is standing in mud with dignity, and dignity has poor footing here. Soon more help arrives, one of the manor boys with the length of rope, an old wheelwright from a nearby cottage, and the tenant recently fined for his hedge, who seems relieved to assist with someone else's trouble. The wheelwright's name is Piers. He has a beard full of wood shavings, a squint like a measuring tool, and hands so broad they seem designed for persuading stubborn timber. He kneels by the wheel and taps each spoke with a small hammer. Wet got in, he says. Wet, in winter, gets into everything wheels, boots, bones, tempers, marriages, and roofs. Medieval life is mostly a long negotiation with moisture. Piers tells you to help lift while the carter wedges a block beneath the axle. You set your shoulder to the cart's side. The wood is cold and slick. Mud grips your boots with affectionate malice. On the count of 3, you heave. The cart rises just enough for the boy to shove a block beneath it. The horse chews grass and contributes spiritually. The broken spoke is removed. Piers trims a rough replacement from a length of ash wood, because ash bends well and has long been trusted for handles, shafts, and wheels. Some swear ash trees protect travellers because they once sheltered holy men from storms. Others say ash is useful because it does not split easily, which is less poetic but more helpful in mud. No one can quite agree whether good wood is blessed or simply well chosen. You hold the lantern as Piers works. Evening thickens around the hedges. The sky has turned the colour of old pewter, and the first crows cross toward the trees. The dog sits just outside the splash of mud, very careful to appear supportive from a clean distance. Piers fits the new spoke into place, then heats the loose iron rim with coals carried in a pan from the cottage hearth. The rim must expand enough to be eased back over the wheel, then shrink as it cools, gripping the wood tight. This is the kind of craft that looks like magic until you see the sweat, smoke, curses, and careful hands behind it. Even then, it remains a little magical. Steam rises when water is poured over the hot iron. The smell is sharp, scorched metal, wet ash, mud, horsehair, and cold air. The boys lean in too close, and everyone tells them to stand back at once, which they do for nearly 4 breaths. As you hold the wheel steady, you hear bells from far off, not your village bell yet, but a thin manor bell marking the close of labour, then, farther still, perhaps the monastery bell for evening prayer. The sounds arrive unevenly over fields and hedges, one clear, one faint, both softened by distance. They remind you of the day's strange chain tower, hearth, market, gatehouse, monastery, forest, fire, manor. Now this muddy lane where a wheel is learning humility. Piers grunts, tightens a wooden peg, and tells the carter to try it. The cart lowers back onto the repaired wheel. For a moment, everyone waits. The carter leads the horse forward 1 step. The wheel turns, it creaks, it wobbles, it does not collapse. A small cheer rises from the boys. The tenant claps Piers on the shoulder. The carter sighs so deeply it might reach spring. "Fine wheel," you say softly. "Noble wheel," the carter adds. "Wheel of rare character," says one of the boys, and the dog gives a little sneeze, which feels like judgment. The carter presses a small coin into Piers's palm and offers you a strip of dried apple. You accept it, because payment in food is the oldest language. The apple is tough, sweet, and smoky from its pouch. You chew while wiping mud from your hands with straw, which mostly moves the mud into new arrangements. Piers asks after the bell tower. He says his grandfather helped mend the belfry steps after a storm tore loose the shutter. You remember the hollowed stones under your feet that morning, the twisted rope superstition, the half-burned candle, the cold bronze waiting in darkness. Piers says bells and wheels are not so different, both depend on balance. Both complain when neglected. Both can ruin a day if they crack. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the finest bells are born from secret mixtures of metal, prayers spoken over the mould, or the skill of founders who know exactly when bronze is ready to pour. You've heard that some people throw silver coins into the molten metal to sweeten the tone. Others say that is foolish waste, and a bell's voice comes from shape, not treasure. You do not know. You only know that when a bell rings true, people look up. The repaired cart rolls on slowly toward the village road, and you follow at a distance. The carter refuses to hurry now, treating each rut like a personal enemy. Dusk gathers in the fields. Smoke rises from cottages ahead. A faint smell of supper reaches you: pottage, onions, damp wood, and the comforting suggestion of bread. Your shoulders ache from lifting. Your hands are sore again beneath the salve. The day has been made of ropes: bell rope, gate rope, cart rope, the unseen ropes of duty tying one small task to the next. You feel tired, but not sharply. It is the broad tiredness of useful labour, heavy and almost warm. As the lane bends toward the village, your tower appears beyond the churchyard wall, dark against the dimming sky. The bell inside cannot be seen, but you feel its presence. Soon it will need your hands again. Soon the evening hour will ask to be shaped. The dog trots ahead, then looks back, urging you on as if he built the road himself. You follow, boots heavy with mud, cloak smelling of smoke and wet wool, carrying the creak of the mended wheel behind you and the waiting silence of the bell before you. You reach the edge of the village as evening gathers fully, and the first window lights begin to glow through horn panes and shutter cracks. Smoke hangs low over the lane, too tired to rise, spreading the smells of damp wood, boiled onions, animal hide, and supper in its plainest forms. Your tower stands behind the church roof, a darker shape against the last grey of the sky. For a moment you think you should go straight there, climb the narrow stair, check the rope, mind the bell, become once more the keeper of the hour. Then the wind slips under your cloak. Your stomach reminds you that smoked fish and dried apple are not a feast, and the alehouse throws a warm stripe of light across the mud. You are only human. The dog reaches the door first. Inside, the alehouse is low, smoky, and crowded enough that no one has to admit they are cold. Rushes cover the floor, damp near the entrance, dry and crackling near the hearth. The rafters are black with years of smoke, and bunches of dried herbs hang from pegs, partly for scent, partly for remedies, and partly because every medieval room seems to believe a hanging bundle of leaves improves its moral standing. A tallow candle gutters on one table, near the fire. A better beeswax candle burns before a small painted image of St. Brigid, patroness of hearths, cattle, and, depending on who is speaking, excellent dairy management. Aveline is not here, but her cousin Maud keeps the alehouse with similar firmness. She sees you, sees the dog, and sighs the sigh of a woman who has been losing arguments to animals since childhood. He stays under the bench, she says. He has taken a vow of humility. You answer. The dog immediately noses toward a dropped crust, proving vows are flexible. You sit near the wall, where heat from the hearth reaches one side of your body while the other remains loyal to winter. Maud brings you a wooden cup of ale, cloudy and sour, safer than water and more cheerful about it. She sets down a trencher with pottage thickened by peas, a strip of smoked fish, and bread dark enough to seem carved from earth. You eat slowly, letting the warmth settle into you. Your hands tremble a little from the day's work, from rope, wheel, weather, and road. Around you, the alehouse hums. A carter tells the story of the broken wheel with growing heroism. By the time he reaches the part where you helped lift the cart, the mud is deeper, the wheel larger, and the horse more noble. Give him another cup, and by morning you may have saved a royal wagon from a dragon. Medieval news travels quickly, accuracy prefers to walk. Near the hearth, two merchants in wet cloaks compare pilgrim badges, little lead signs from shrines near and far, sewn to hats or pinned to cloaks as proof of devotion, travel, or at least the ability to buy small holy souvenirs. One badge shows a shell, another a saint with a staff, another a tiny bell. You lean closer to see the bell badge, and the merchant notices. From a shrine beyond the marsh, he says. They ring a bell over the sick. Does it cure them? He shrugs. Some swear that it does. Others say the sick mostly recover if they were going to recover. No one can quite agree whether that is cynicism or wisdom. The alehouse accepts both with equal thirst. At another table, a woman rubs a child's chest with a warm cloth steeped in thyme. The child coughs, then settles. Maud tells her to hang an onion near the bed and keep the feet wrapped. An old shepherd insists a charm written on parchment and worn under the left sleeve works better, provided no one reads it aloud. The priest would object, unless the charm includes a saint's name, in which case objections become more complicated. Medieval healing, like medieval roads, has many ruts leading in the same direction. You drink your ale, it is thin, but after cold fields and wet lanes, it tastes like mercy in a cup. A man with a fur-lined cloak, much patched at the hem, sits opposite you without asking. His beard is silver, his eyes bright, and his hat carries 2 pilgrim badges and 1 feather that has given up on height. He says he came through the market at noon, heard of a relic in town, and saw a monk buying honey cakes while pretending to examine ink powder. You think at once of Brother Matthew's quick smile. Which monk, you ask? He waves a hand. Thin fellow. Soft voice. Looked like he knew where coins sleep. That is not evidence, but it is a good description. The man lowers his voice. They say storehouse keys have gone missing at the manor. They have been found again, you say. He replies, as if that makes it worse. Lost keys that return are more interesting than lost keys that stay lost. You cannot argue. Around you, the room thickens with talk tolls, frost, a possible wolf near the north wood, a marriage bargain delayed by a missing cow, the doubtful relic, the walking stone, the buried bell, the cracked handbell awaiting repair. These stories move from table to table like sparks, each one catching, dimming, brightening in another mouth. The dog has found a place beneath your bench, where he rests his chin on his paws and watches ankles pass. Now and then someone drops a crumb with suspicious generosity. He accepts each as if performing a public service. Maud brings more wood to the hearth. Sparks lift, brief and gold, into the smoke. The alehouse door opens and closes, letting in strips of cold. Each newcomer stamps mud from boots, shakes rain or mist from a hood, and brings another piece of the world inside. This is how a quiet village hears beyond itself, not through books, not often through letters, but through wet travellers, tired merchants, pilgrims, tinkers, carters, and people with more confidence than proof. A fiddler in the corner draws a slow tune from his instrument, not lively enough for dancing, only enough to soften the edges of speech. The melody winds under the rafters, around cups and shoulders and bent heads. Your eyelids grow heavy. You think of the bell rope hanging in the tower, of the repaired wheel turning through mud, of the little altar bells wrapped in linen, of the scriptorium rabbit bravely sounding its tiny horn. Then Maud leans close and says the evening bell is near. You set down your cup. Duty returns gently, but it returns. You stand, joints stiff, cloak smelling of smoke, wet wool, ale, and the long road. The room tilts its attention toward you for half a breath. Bell ringers are not lords, not priests, not reeves. Yet when the hour comes, people expect you to rise. That expectation is its own kind of authority, small but steady. The silver-bearded pilgrim lifts his cup. Ring it kindly, he says. As kindly as bronze allows, you answer. Outside, night has settled into the lane. The mud shines under a thin moon. Behind you, the alehouse murmurs on, warm and smoky, holding its stories close. The dog slips out after you, licking his muzzle, clearly satisfied with the spiritual benefits of community. You walk toward the church, where the tower waits in darkness, and the village, full of pottage, wet wool, old fears, little jokes, and ordinary hope, prepares to hear itself gathered once more by sound. You cross the churchyard with the dog close behind, leaving the alehouse warmth to glow through its small windows like banked embers in the dark. The graves lie quiet under a skin of frost, each wooden marker silvered at the edge. Your boots press into old mud now stiffening with cold. Above you, the tower rises square and black, and within it the bell waits, invisible but present, like a thought too large to ignore. The church door gives its familiar wooden sigh when you lift the latch. Inside, the nave smells of cold rushes, old wax, damp wool, and faint incense left from prayers earlier in the day. You pause just long enough to breathe it in. The painted saints look down from the walls with their faded eyes, patient as ever. The half-burned candle near the stair has been replaced by a shorter one, its flame trembling in a cup of shadow. You climb. The spiral stair tightens around you. Stone brushes your shoulder. Your knees complain, though politely, because they know there is no point arguing with stairs. At the belfry, the air is sharper. Night presses through the shutters. You find the rope by touch, thick and rough in your hands, and for a moment you stand still, listening to the village below a door closing, a cough, a pig shifting in its pen, a last laugh from the alehouse fading into the lane. Then you pull. The evening bell rolls out over the roofs, slower than dawn, deeper somehow in the cold. It passes over Maud's smoky room, over Widow Avelin's banked hearth, over the manor road where the mended wheel has surely reached shelter by now, over the hedges where frost gathers, over the quiet fields and the black line of trees. One note, then another, each one spacing the village away from labour and toward night. Some swear the evening bell keeps wandering spirits from crossing thresholds after dark. Others say it simply reminds people to bar their doors, cover the fire, and stop pretending they can finish one more chore by moonlight. No one can quite agree which protection is greater. When the last note fades, you coil the rope and rest your palm against it, feeling the faint tremor leave the hemp. Below, the dog barks once from the porch, offended perhaps by being excluded from liturgical labour. You smile in the dark. You do not go straight home. A message waits at the church door. Delivered by a breathless manor boy, the steward needs a small packet carried to the keep before the night deepens. The keep stands beyond the far ridge, not a great castle of songs and banners, but a squat stone house with a watchtower, a gate, and enough draughty passages to make any candle question its purpose. You think of your sore feet. You think of the steward's missing keys. You think of saying no. Then you take the packet. The road to the keep climbs past the last cottages and out along a ridge where the wind moves freely. The dog comes, naturally, because at this point refusing him would require legal proceedings. Moonlight lies thin on the ruts, far off. The keep shows itself by torchlight first, small orange points trembling against stone. A watchman calls down as you approach, his voice muffled by height and cold. You give your name, your errand, and the steward's seal. The gate opens with a groan of iron and oak. Inside the yard, men move through torch smoke, carrying buckets, checking harness, closing stable doors. The keep wall holds the day's cold and gives it back generously. Medieval stone, you reflect, is less a building material than a long-term arrangement with discomfort. A servant leads you through the hall. The floor is strewn with rushes, fresher near the high table, older near the door, where mud and boots have made their own dark map. A fire burns in the hearth, large but not large enough for the room. Shadows climb the walls. Shields hang above benches. A deerhound sleeps near the fire and lifts one eye at your dog, who wisely adopts the posture of a humble visitor with no interest in disputed territory. The steward waits in a side chamber lit by 2 beeswax candles. Their clean scent seems almost grand after the tallow smoke of the road. He takes the packet, breaks the seal, reads, and frowns in the way of men who believe paper has personally failed them. On the table beside him lie iron keys, 3 of them, heavy and black. You notice his hand move toward them, touch them, count them without seeming to count. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a man protects keys because he fears thieves, or because he knows too well what locked doors conceal. He asks what you heard at the manor. You speak carefully the court, the meadow dispute, the hedge, the pig, the talk of keys gone missing and found again. The steward's mouth tightens. People make stories where numbers should be. He says, you think of bells, relics, walking stones, buried bronze, charms above hearths, and Brother Matthew's quick smile. Stories are easier to carry. You answer. He looks at you then, perhaps surprised that a bell ringer has opinions beyond rope and weather, but he only nods and sends you to the hall for bread before you leave. You sit near the lower hearth with a trencher of coarse bread soaked in broth and a strip of salted meat. A page refills your cup with small ale. Nearby, 2 guards speak of night watches and a fox troubling the hens. One has tied a sprig of vervain inside his sleeve, for luck against fever and steel both. Some swear vervain was used to dress holy wounds. Others say it keeps away bad dreams if tucked under a pillow, even now. It is hard to tell whether the plant is powerful or simply well advertised. The torchlight flickers over stone, wool, iron, and tired faces. Outside, wind presses against the shutters. Somewhere above, a small watch bell rings once, bright and brief, marking the change of guard. Its note is thinner than yours, but brave in the cold. When you step back into the yard, the night has grown deeper. The steward's candles remain in your mind, and the keys on the table, and the way his fingers counted them. The keep gate opens for you again. The dog slips through at your side, eager for the road home or perhaps merely for the next warm room. Behind you, the keep settles into torchlight and watchful stone. Ahead, the village lies hidden beyond fields and darkness, waiting for midnight bells, old fears, and the slow return of your tired feet. You leave the keep by the lower road, where frost has begun to gather in the ruts and the moon hangs pale behind a veil of cloud. The gate closes behind you with a slow wooden groan, and the sound follows for several steps before the night swallows it. Your cloak holds the smell of the keep's hearth broth, smoke, beeswax, old rushes, and beneath it lingers the sharper scent of wet wool gathered through the long day. The dog trots at your side, quieter now, his white paw flashing whenever moonlight catches the mud. The road slopes down between dark fields. Stubble glimmers silver. Hedges crouch on either side, black and tangled, their branches tipped with frost. Somewhere in the distance, water moves under ice at the ditch bottom. You hear it only when the wind stills. Above, clouds drift slowly, and stars appear and vanish as if someone is opening and closing little shutters in heaven. You walk carefully, because night makes every rut ambitious. Your boots slip once, and you steady yourself with a hand on the hedge, earning a thorn through your glove for the trouble. Medieval roads, you think, remain deeply committed to character building. Far away, a bell sounds, you stop. It is not your village bell. The note is too faint, too silvered by distance. Perhaps it comes from the abbey, ringing some night office beyond the fields, perhaps from a chapel across the river, carried strangely by cold air. At night, bells travel by their own roads. They cross valleys, slip through trees, and arrive where no path would take them. Some swear that when the air is frozen hard, bells can be heard from churches long abandoned. Others say cold simply sharpens sound. No one can quite agree, especially after dark. The dog lifts his head and listens too. For once, he seems less interested in food than mystery. You go on. At the edge of the manor fields, two figures stand near a hayrick, speaking in low voices. They fall silent when they see you. One is the tenant fined for the broken hedge. The other you do not know, or perhaps you know him only by shape, narrow shoulders, hood drawn close, a small bundle tucked beneath one arm. For a moment, moonlight touches his face. It might be Brother Matthew. It might be any thin man with business he prefers unobserved. Even now, it is hard to tell whether suspicion reveals truth or merely paints faces in familiar colours. Cold night. You say, cold enough. The tenant answers. The other man nods once, then turns away toward the lane that leads west. You do not follow. You are tired, and not every shadow is yours to chase. Yet the image stays with you, a hooded figure, a bundle, the memory of missing keys, and the quick smile of a monk near an account tablet. Stories are easier to carry, you told the steward. Now you feel one settling across your own shoulders. Near the village boundary stands a small roadside shrine set into the wall, its candle long burned out. Someone has tucked a sprig of holly beside the little wooden saint. Holly is said to guard houses from lightning and ill wishing, though in winter It mostly guards the world from looking too bare. You touch the cold stone beneath the niche and breathe slowly. Your feet ache, your palms ache. Your thoughts feel crowded. Then from ahead comes a murmur of voices. A few villagers are gathered near the well, cloaks thrown over nightshirts, caps crooked, faces pale in moonlight. Aveline stands among them with a lantern in one hand and a ladle in the other, because apparently she has chosen ladles as her instrument of civic authority. Maud from the alehouse is there too, and Tom the thatcher, and the miller's apprentice rubbing his eyes. They speak softly but all at once. When they see you, relief moves through the group. You heard it, Maud asks. The Abbey bell when, says Tom. 3 knocks from under the well. Everyone looks at the well. The dog looks at the well too, then at you, as if wondering whether wells distribute scraps. You step closer. The well rope hangs still. The bucket rests on the stones. Frost rims the cover. Nothing knocks. Nothing whispers. The darkness inside the well is deep and round, smelling of cold water and old earth. Aveline says her grandmother heard such knocks before the hard winter when the mill stream froze solid. The miller's apprentice says it was probably a loose stone falling. Tom says loose stones do not knock 3 times politely. Some swear wells warn villages before storms, sickness, or strangers. Others say wells collect every sound dropped into the earth and return them when they please. No one can quite agree, but no one laughs loudly either. Then, far beyond the fields, thunder mutters. Not sharp thunder, a low, distant roll, half buried under cloud. The villagers turn their faces toward it. In winter, thunder feels out of season, like a monk at a dice table. Aveline crosses herself. Maud mutters that weather has grown rude. You should ring if storm comes close, Tom says. I know. You answer. Of all the duties of a bell, storm ringing is the most uncertain. Some believe bells break thunderclouds and drive lightning away. Others whisper that ringing during lightning invites the bolt straight into the tower, which seems unfair but possible. Bell ringers have died for less than weather, yet when clouds gather, villagers still look toward the tower, because fear prefers a sound to silence. You leave them by the well, promising to listen. The churchyard gate creaks as you enter. The yew stands motionless, black against cloud. Graves lie tucked beneath frost. The dog follows to the porch, then stops, unwilling to climb the tower, or perhaps wise enough to know when human work becomes too vertical. Inside the church, the air is colder than before. The saints on the walls seem almost hidden in shadow. You take the small lantern from its hook and climb the spiral stair once more. Each step rises through darkness. Your hand slides along damp stone. Above, wind worries the shutters. In the belfry, you stand beside the rope and listen. Another bell sounds far away, then another, fainter still. The abbey perhaps, or a village beyond the ridge. Midnight bells, old fear bells, weather bells, prayer bells. Their notes come thinly through the dark, like threads drawn across the fields. You do not ring yet. You wait, because waiting is also part of the work. The thunder does not return. The wind softens. The village below grows quiet again, though you imagine eyes still open beneath wool blankets, ears turned toward roof and well and sky. You keep your hand on the rope, feeling its roughness, its readiness. Somewhere near the porch, the dog gives a single sleepy huff. You smile in the dark. The night remains uncertain, but for now it holds. The bells in the distance fade one by one, and you stand in your tower, between earth and weather, between fear and sleep, keeping watch over the small quiet village that trusts bronze to speak when words are not enough. You remain in the belfry until the cold works through your boots and settles in your toes like a small stubborn tenant. The thunder does not return. The well does not knock again. No rider comes hard along the road. No flame rises from a thatch roof. No cry breaks open the night. Only the wind moves around the tower, soft now, brushing the shutters with the tired fingers of weather that has thought better of itself. Below, the village sleeps by degrees. A few hearths still glow under ash. A few old women lie awake counting aches like rosary beads. A few children dream of walking stones, buried bells, and dogs clever enough to attend market without paying toll. You stand with one hand on the rope, not pulling, only feeling the weight of readiness. At last, you descend. The stair curves beneath you, slick with cold. Your lantern flame leans and straightens. In the nave, the painted saints wait in their smoky half-light, and the rushes whisper beneath your steps. You pause near the altar, where a beeswax candle has burned low, its golden pool trembling in the cup. Some swear a candle that gutters blue warns of spirits nearby. Others say the wick is damp. No one can quite agree, though damp wicks have probably caused more fear than ghosts. You pinch the flame carefully, leaving a thread of smoke to curl upward. Outside, the dog's asleep against the porch wall, nose tucked beneath tail. He opens one eye as you step out, decides the world is not feeding anyone yet, and closes it again. You pull your cloak tight and cross to the little lean-to beside the tower, where you keep your blanket, spare rope, oil, and a wooden cup. It is not a grand lodging. The roof leaks in 2 places. The walls admit philosophical amounts of wind, and the straw mattress has opinions about every rib you own. Still, after the day's roads, it feels nearly royal, a very humble king, perhaps. A king with chilblains. You sleep lightly, the way bell-ringers sleep, with one ear in the world. Dreams come in fragments, Brother Matthew's quick smile. Iron keys on a table, a wheel shrinking tight beneath steaming water, the scriptorium rabbit blowing his little horn, the well waiting under frost. Through it all moves the bell, dark and patient above you. Before dawn, you wake on your own. No bell calls you this time. No monk, no watchman, no steward, no market crier. The habit of the hour has entered your bones. You sit up under your wool blanket and listen to the blackness before morning. The village is silent, but not empty. A cow shifts in a byre. Somewhere, a latch taps softly in the wind. The dog snores under the porch with impressive confidence. You rise. The cold meets you like an old creditor. You wrap your cloak, rub your hands, and take up the lantern. There is work before the bell can speak. You check the oil, trim the wick, and climb once more into the tower, each step familiar enough to be almost part of your body. In the belfry, the bell hangs above you, its bronze surface touched faintly by the first grey before sunrise. You inspect the rope by lantern light. No twist, no fray deep enough to worry you. Still, you run your fingers along it, feeling for weakness. Bell ropes wear where hands grip, where pulleys rub, where damp creeps in and patience fails. A snapped rope during ringing can lash like an angry serpent, though serpents at least do not usually fall from towers. You coil and uncoil the lower length, then hang it cleanly. Near the beam sits a small leather pouch of chalk, waxed thread, and a sliver of tallow. You use the tallow on a stiff place in the rope, then check the knot near the wheel. This is the quiet craft no one sees tending the things that make sound possible. Villagers hear the bell and think of prayer, labour, meals, death, weddings, storms. You hear it and think also of hemp, pulley, beam, crack, swing, timing, and whether your shoulder will forgive you by Easter. The dawn has not yet broken, but the east begins to loosen from black into ash grey. You open one shutter, cold air enters at once, sharp and clean. The roofs below are pale with frost. Smoke has not yet risen. The lane lies empty. The well stands quiet, offering no further opinions. Beyond the houses, fields fade into mist, and the forest edge waits as dark as sleep. On a peg beside the stair hangs a little handbell used for sick calls when the priest goes out after dark. You lift it and test it with the gentlest motion. It gives a small, clear note, better than the cracked procession bell at the market, though not as sweet as the monastery's altar bells. Some swear every bell has a temper, some cheerful, some mournful, some proud, some reluctant. Others insist bronze is bronze, even now. It is hard to tell whether bells have souls or whether people pour their own souls into listening. You set the handbell back. The village priest arrives below with a cough before you hear his step. He calls your name softly from the stair. You answer, and soon his head appears at the belfry entrance, wrapped in a hood, face pale from poor sleep. He carries a small book, a ring of keys, and the faint smell of rosemary, which he chews for his chest because the infirmary once recommended it, and because priests, like everyone else, prefer remedies that fit in the mouth. Storm past, he asks. For now. And the well. Still a well. He nods gravely, as if this is good news but not decisive. Together you prepare for the morning peal. He murmurs the hour, glances at the eastern sky, and reminds you that today may bring travellers from the North Road, perhaps the same pilgrims, perhaps word from the manor, perhaps nothing more than hens and complaints. A day rarely announces its full contents at dawn. It arrives wrapped in mist and lets people unwrap it badly. You take your place at the rope. For a moment, before you pull, the whole village seems held in one breath. The dog below is silent. The priest stands with his hands tucked into his sleeves. The rooftops wait. The fields wait. Even the cold seems to pause. Then you ring. The first bell of dawn rolls out clean and deep, stronger than last night's watch, gentler than alarm. It moves over the village like warm cloth laid across sleeping shoulders. Doors will open soon. Fires will be stirred. Pottage will thicken. Cows will be milked. Children will complain. The manor court will remember its grievances. The road will soften with mud. Somewhere, Brother Matthew may smile too quickly over his accounts. Somewhere, the cracked handbell may wait for repair. Somewhere, a wheel of rare character may continue turning. You pull again and again, letting the bell gather the scattered edges of the world. When the final note fades, morning has begun. The final note of the dawn bell fades over the village, and you stand in the belfry with both hands still wrapped around the rope, feeling the last tremor pass from hemp into skin. Below you, the small world begins again. A latch lifts. A hen objects to existence. Smoke rises from Avelin's roof in a thin blue thread. The well waits quietly in the lane, behaving so much like an ordinary well that everyone will soon begin pretending they were never worried about it. The priest descends first, coughing into his sleeve, rosemary still sharp on his breath. You remain a moment longer, looking out through the open shutter. Frost lies over the fields, softening ruts, roofs, hedges, and even the manure heap behind Tom the Thatcher's cottage. which is perhaps the closest winter comes to mercy. The brown dog sits below in the churchyard, staring up at you as if the bell has personally delayed breakfast. You climb down slowly, joints stiff but spirit calm. In the church, the rushes smell cold and sweet beneath your boots. The saints on the walls catch the weak morning light. St. Martin's faded cloak looks warmer than anything you own. Near the porch, Aveline waits with a covered bowl. "Pottage," she says, before you fall over and become a parish matter. You accept it with both hands. The bowl is warm, thick with oats and leeks, and it steams against your face. The dog sits beautifully, too beautifully. Aveline narrows her eyes, but after a moment drops him a crust. Some swear dogs understand charity better than men do. Others say dogs simply understand timing. No one can quite agree, and the dog offers no clarification. You eat beside the church wall while morning opens. The market road glistens beyond the village. The manor ridge sits pale under mist. Farther still, hidden by folds of land, lie the gatehouse, the monastery, the forest track, the watchfire, the keep, and all the small bells that stitched yesterday into memory. You carry them quietly, the cracked bell, the guest bell, the abbey bell, the watch bell, the handbell for sick calls, and your own great village bell above, resting after its labour. A boy runs up from the lane with news. The steward's keys have been found in the storehouse grain bin, though no one admits placing them there. Brother Matthew, it is said, has ridden back to the monastery before sunrise with an account book wrapped under his cloak. This proves nothing, naturally. Medieval mysteries often end by becoming errands for someone else. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the monk was guilty, forgetful, or simply unlucky enough to look suspicious in candlelight. The village accepts the uncertainty with breakfast. You walk once around the churchyard, checking the path, the door, the latch, the little places where frost has made stone slippery. The dog follows. The sun lifts higher, pale gold through river mist. Its light touches the tower, then the roofs, then the muddy road where yesterday's footprints have frozen into shallow cups. You think of the wheel mended with ash wood, the watchmen by their smoky fire, the woman in the scarlet hood carrying a child's curl, and the scribes bending over parchment while a rabbit in the margin blows his brave little horn. At last, the village no longer needs you for a while. That is the secret mercy of duty. It releases you in pieces. You sit on the low churchyard wall, bowl empty, hands wrapped in your cloak, and listen as ordinary life rises around you. A hammer starts at the smithy. The baker's door opens. Someone laughs near the well, too loudly, as if to prove fear has passed. A cart creaks toward the road, its wheel sounding steady enough. Above, the bell hangs silent in its dark chamber, but its work remains in the air. It has called people from sleep into morning. It has told them the night is over. It has made a circle around the village, not of stone or law or lordship, but of sound. Inside that circle, people quarrel, cook, mend, pray, gossip, worry, bargain, and endure. And you, cold-handed bell-ringer of a quiet village, sit beneath the tower while the last bell fades into the day. The morning softens. The bowl rests empty beside you. The dog lowers himself near your boots, warm against the cold stone, and the village sounds grow slower, gentler, farther away. Smoke rises straight now, no longer troubled by wind. The river mist thins over the fields. The frost loosens from thatch and hedge. Drop by drop, each tiny sound too small to count and yet part of the waking world. You let your shoulders sink. There is nothing urgent to mend, no rope to pull, no gate to pass through, no dark road asking for your footsteps. The tower stands behind you, steady and old. The church wall holds the pale warmth of the new sun. Somewhere, a mother hums to a child. Somewhere, a spoon stirs pottage in a pot. Somewhere, beyond fields and forest, another bell answers another village, but faintly now, kindly now, as if heard through wool. Your eyes grow heavy. The dog sighs in his sleep. The saints keep their painted watch. The half-burned candle waits for evening. All the roads of yesterday fold themselves, close the muddy market, the rain-dark gatehouse, the monastery corridor, the forest shrine, the watchfire, the manor yard, the torch-lit keep. They become small and quiet inside you, like embers covered safely for the night. You are safe here. The bell is still. The village is held in morning light. The cold has eased from your hands. Breath by breath, the medieval world grows dimmer, warmer, softer, until there is only stone, straw, smoke, and the slow, gentle hush after sound. So rest now. Let the tower keep watch. Let the bell sleep above you. Let the road wait outside the wall. Nothing more is needed from you tonight, or this morning, or in this little pocket of peace. The last note has gone, but its comfort remains, fading slowly into quiet darkness, like a bedside whisper.